Welcome, viewers, to the latest edition of the UK Podcast. And also welcome to Guy and Norman. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Well,
cheers.
And thank you, anybody who's going to watch it in future. We like to be watched. So today, we're going to deal with a bit more of a controversial issue because those of you who live in Midland will know that the city of Leicester, where there has been communities of Muslim Pakistanis and Hindu Indians, has been undergoing uprising, minor uprising. The youths have set about each other some weeks ago, and the police have been trying to separate them. And there's some background to this because we used to think of Hinduism as a sort of a placid faith. But Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, has been mobilizing his base in the, unfortunately, the polarizing tribal style of politics that's become commonplace worldwide. And so he's condoned an aggressive anti-Muslim movement called the Hindutva. And this activity has spread across the continent and arrived at Leicester. Eventually, the police managed to keep the warring sides apart. And it's a shame because for decades, the two communities have lived peaceably together. But to give the religious leaders their due, they appealed for calm and everything has settled down. So I don't know if you guys know anything about that. Would like to chip in with your knowledge of what's been happening there?
I've got no specific knowledge of this particular. I've got no special knowledge of this particular one. Apparently, it started after a friendly cricket match between the Hindus and the Muslims, which is really ironic because the whole point of these sporting events is often to join people together and show they're all similar. So it's rather surprising, unfortunate that all this should start after a cricket match, if that's indeed what happened. And I think my main point is it just shows you how religion can so easily lend itself to these sorts of as you said, tribal disputes.
Yeah. It's been absolutely. It's not cricket. It used to be a saying, didn't it?
Definitely not. So and the idea that playing cricket would show them their common humanity doesn't seem to have worked in this case.
No, it's certainly not cricket to riot.
Yes, I mean, the religion is inevitably divisive. This is one of the problems. And when people think that their religion is more important than the law of the land, and motivates them to the point of breaking that law, then that just really illustrates strongly how problematical religious beliefs are. So I think that's one of the problems. Yeah, the other very interesting point here is the response of the community leaders in Leicester, which has resulted in the thing in the problems settling. And I think therein lies a lesson, I think, for the rest of the country. And Leicester's not the only place where community leaders work together and try to cooperate on a sort of interfaith and intercommunal basis. And certainly in Manchester, there's quite a lot of connection between community leaders of the Anglicans and Catholics and Muslims and Hindus and others in forums like the Faith Network for Manchester and the Muslim Jewish Forum and a few other organizations. And I think these are quite important, especially for minorities that are potentially at risk. And in Manchester, we've had, over the last 20, 30 years, occasional violence, for instance, against Jews. And we've had Jewish cemeteries being desecrated, and there's a kosher restaurant that I've been to a couple of times, which was actually bombed Yeah, and things like this happen from time to time, but it's important that somehow there are structures that build up sort of understanding between communities and try and counteract the malevolent influence that is inherent in religions.
And it's got to be a bit more effective than what do they call it? Ecumenism that the Archbishop tries to promote. Yeah. Well, round about the same time as this was, or just after this happened in Leicester, some of us attended an event in Birmingham.
Oh, yes.
That was Esther and Jeffrey and I. And this event was held by the National Secular Society, which we're all members of as well. And it was called Islam and Secular Democracy. And we went along and we watched a lot of people trying to put, in my words, lipstick on their pig.
I love the image.
They were trying to say that Sharia version of Islam is not theirs. They disown that fundamentalist end of Islam, but Quranic Islam is all right. Just see this little video here about one of them speaking on that front.
To suck up to the conservatives, to suck up to the reactionaries, to suck up to the conservatives, whether they're Sunni or Shia or Wahhabi, Salafi, Ikhwan, Taliban, whatever. And the modern, liberal, progressive thinking, critical Muslims, where are they? For example, we've started this wonderful new think tank. You would have thought that the government would be knocking at our doors. Not that we want them to come necessarily, but they make no effort to contact us. We are providing the theological wherewithal, the theological weaponry to deal with these theological fascists in our society. So where is the damn government and all the other people coming along? We will provide them with the ammunition to shoot these SOBs. But no, they don't do that. So this country, and with due respect to the lady up there, it's not going to take 500-600 years or 1,000 years. We can do this in 4 or 5 decades. But it needs an accelerated attempt, whether it is internally and externally in terms of the government and society. And we need to have joint up thinking and to see how to bring people like Yasmin, me, this young man here, all together, and how to combat fascist Islam. Because that's what it is. It's fascist Islam. And we need to be bold enough, proud enough, and brave enough to say it's fascism.
There you go.
Well, that's interesting, that, isn't it? I mean, for a Muslim to call Islam, presumably he's a Muslim, was he? To call Islam fascist is a step forward, because unfortunately, there are real moral issues and totalitarian tendencies in Islam, as there is actually in most religions, I think.
Yeah, my position would be, it's a no true Scotsman argument. You know, the fundamentalists are the honourable, honest ones, if you like, because they're going by the doctrine, and he's trying to water it down. That's not far enough. We wouldn't miss it if it went away entirely.
I don't know whether any of you saw, there was a thing in the newspaper about 2 weeks ago when this first story first broke out about in Iran, rather than Leicester, about the riots consequent on the death of that young woman.
Yes.
Possibly at the hands of the so-called morality police. And this was Ayatollah who was actually saying that the Quran talks about morality police, but their job was not to police the public, but instead to combat autocratic rulers and keep them in line. That was the original, he says, the original Quranic purpose of morality police. And I don't know if any of them have followed that one up, but it's a very interesting idea that was the job, really, according to the Quran itself. Their job wasn't to bash the public, but to keep the leaders in control.
So well, see how well that's working, eh?
Well, I mean, I've read the Quran. I don't recall anything about the morality of police, but I mean, I suppose that might have referred. The interesting thing about the Quran is that there's a really fascinating and accumulating body of evidence that show that the Quran was not divinely given, but was derived, a lot of it, from earlier Aramaic texts. And so this is a fascinating study. There's people like Luling, Gunther Luling in Germany, and others. Unfortunately, it's being revealed largely by Fanda Films, which is a Christian sort of mission to Islam. And they're getting all these academics that are not sort of wedded to Christianity, but they're getting a platform for their research and their studies. Thomas Alexander, academic.
I wonder what their motive is.
Who? The Fanda Films?
The Christians.
Well, no, they're quite open. They're openly. They have a mission to Islam to try and bring them back into the true faith of Christianity. Good luck to them.
That's what I meant.
Some of them are very brave. There's a woman called Hatun Kosh or something, who goes to Speaker's Corner. She's a little 5 foot something woman, and she gets up on a step ladder and she lectures these Muslims about how false their religion is, and how there are lots of different Qurans and how it's been changed and how it's derived and etc. etc. And she was actually assaulted not long ago. So she's lucky, really. She's very brave.
She is indeed. Yes. I don't think I go and do that.
This is where their talk of blasphemy comes in. Any comment whatsoever on the history of Islam is just labelled blasphemy. In other words, you just have to accept the whole lot without any kind of comment at all. This is what Salman Rushdie, his trouble was. He sort of, in his book, he just really referred to and made a fictionalized account of the origins of Islam, and that was automatically called blasphemy. In other words, you're not allowed even to look at it. You just take the whole lot, and even to question it is blasphemy.
Yes. Who was it who said, to find out who controls you, just find out who you mustn't criticize?
And in Russia, Putin.
Absolutely. So here's a bit of a controversial thing. Last podcast, we were talking about the British way of life. When immigrants come to this country, should we ask them to adopt the British way of life and leave their religions behind?
Well, they can have their religion, but they should understand that the UK has actually abolished the blasphemy law, and therefore it is not blasphemy for any UK citizen to comment on a religious subject. They can, if they're going to live in England, that's one of the things they have to remember and obey. It's nothing. They don't drop their actual religious practices themselves.
Yeah, I mean,
I
think. Go on.
Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
I mean, there is obviously a fundamental tension there between the human rights of immigrants to believe what they wish, and the law of the land, again, in a secular society where we must insist that there's a level playing field where everybody's views are respected and no one's religious opinions are privileged above the law or anybody else's. That's the sort of fundamental liberal regime, I suppose.
Absolutely.
And they've got to accept that.
Yes.
If they don't accept that, they really shouldn't be living in this country. We should require them to leave.
Well, here's the thing then. Supposing when they arrive, we issue them with a leaflet giving figures about our demographic, starting with the UK is majority atheist.
I don't think the UK is majority atheist, I'm afraid, John. I'm not sure that that's correct. Majority non-religious, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The census results from 2021 are, I believe, due any day.
Yes.
And it's going to be fascinating to see where we're up to, both as regards things like atheism, but also as regards non-religiousness and the decline of religions.
Yes. Ooh, we're waiting for that on tenterhooks.
Yeah, I mean, we may be disappointed. Maybe there's been a religious revival that we haven't noticed.
Oh dear. So I realise that this is a thorny issue because it could be interpreted as the pot calling the kettle black, since the British, our ancestors, colonised much of the world and took their English culture with them. They didn't merge with the native culture, did they? They set up Little England all over the world. But the point I would make here is that in those days, invasion was more or less an accepted thing, and it was an aggressive thing, whereas immigration is a passive thing. It requires some sort of permission, some sort of acceptance by the host, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. So I sympathise with John, with your general idea that perhaps immigrants on arriving at the country should be presented with something about this country. It doesn't have to say we're all atheists,
No,
but it can certainly say that there is no blasphemy law here, and they must be prepared to understand that there will be all kinds of statements about their own religion, and that they have to argue with them peacefully and not start little battles about them.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Norman. That sounds like a good proposal. I'm wondering if it has a chance, actually.
Well, let's try it. I wasn't suggesting that we should misrepresent the truth, but just present it. Say, look, this is the place you're coming to. This is what it's like.
Yeah. I mean, that seems to me to link to another point about the place of immigrants. It seems to me that anyone who's here and is paying tax should actually have a vote. And if we give them that status, then we expect them also to abide by, the regime and the laws of the land along the lines we've just been talking about.
Absolutely, because the EU has a similar system to that. You can, if you're a citizen of any of the countries that are in the EU, you can vote for EU candidates no matter where you live or where you pay tax. Yeah. So EU residents here can vote for EU candidates for the European Parliament, even though they're not in the EU, resident-wise. So I'm going to bring this little chat to an end, but I want to show, because I was at this, as I said, I was at this NSS event, and I actually got to speak. I was in the audience, but I actually managed to put my hand up and get to be the first speaker. And I want to show you that because I tried to say in my roundabout way, a pox on all your face. So here it is. This is what I did.
Wanting to ask questions by the look of it. We'll start over here with the gentleman in the blue shirt.
Thank you. And thank you to our speakers, especially our passionate speaker who's just finished speaking. I didn't catch your name, I'm afraid. But I loved your presentation. I photographed all your slides. And with your permission...
Copyright. I'm kidding. Yeah. I'm kidding. You're free to use them.
I was going to say, with your permission, I'll use them for my speeches. The thing is, I'm the president of Atheism UK.
Wonderful, welcome.
And I would only need to change one word on your slides. And it would be Islam for atheism. Because it seemed to me that you were making the case for the irrelevance of Allah and Islam.
I think you misread my speech there. I believe there is an omnipotent deity. You call this God Allah, Yahweh, Huda, Bhagwan, Jehovah, Elohim. It doesn't really matter. So I believe there is profoundly that there is this deity. And this deity has given me, and by extension everyone else who is Muslim, the divine wisdom and guidance how to live life productively and produce a harmonious, happy and healthy society. And so I believe it's this Quranic laws, but not just Sharia, the Quranic original epistle, that provides me to make, I believe, a positive contribution to UK society.
Can I come back very quickly?
Yes, thank you. Well, we all looked at the first sentence that was presented here, what Muslims believe. And we all thought that Muslims was a significant word in that sentence. I contend that it wasn't. The significant word is believe, because beliefs are formed inside heads by brains. They are attitudes towards propositions, and the possessors of those attitudes can reiterate them in their brains until they are certain of the truth of the proposition, whatever it is. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, you name it. And then they can become dogmatic about their beliefs, wish to impose them upon others, and consider those who don't share them to be against them. That leads to the dehumanizing of others and ultimately war. Let's leave the insides of our skulls for a moment and look outwards. Out there are no beliefs. Nothing is fixed. There is no certainty. The contents of the cosmos are all relative to each other and to the passage of time. So far, no evidence for any creator deity has ever been detected.
Can I just check how long this speech is planning to go on for? Are you nearly coming to a close?
I'm nearly there.
Please do.
Thank you. So the rational position is to be skeptical towards the claims of believers. And remember, all religious claims are based on books in which men have written their thoughts. They are not evidence. So without evidence for any God, all religions are groundless, without foundation, and valueless. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the question there.
Well done. Brilliant.
Yes.
That's spot on. Did you get any applause, John?
Well, it's interesting because I don't know if you noticed, but I made two little speeches, and at the end of the first one, there was a single clap. And then,
was that Jeffrey?
Yeah, no, it wasn't actually. But you know what happens? People think they're about to start a round of applause, and then they think better of it. Oh, this audience is not going to be sympathetic. And then at the end of my second attempt, you could see in the shot that people are pulling their hands apart, ready to clap, but not bringing them together, because we're all conscious of how we're likely to go down, aren't we? We all want to be appreciated by an audience. Anyway, I want to thank Esther for those recordings. She was there filming for us using her iPad. There's a credit for iPad as well.
That's actually amazing to get it. I mean, it wasn't high quality, but it was good enough.
Yeah, and we've got lots of them. She videoed the whole event, a couple of hours long, and I've clipped it, and it's going to be stimulus for future podcasts. We've got one on the state funding of faith schools. We've got one on the translations of scriptures. We've got one on the only way Muslims, I forget, but we've got lots of those little clips from that event that we can spin off for our shows. What do you think?
Yes.
Good work. Yeah, definitely.
Good one, eh? Yeah. Okay, well, I think we've hammered this out and put the world to rights, as usual. The final thing I'm going to...
If only we were Prime Minister.
Sorry?
If only we were Prime Minister.
Yes, absolutely. So the final thing I'm going to do is promote this event. Ta-da! We have got AC Grayling coming to Conway Hall in London on the 29th of November to speak on the topic of proving atheism. Join us. Come and it's only a tenner to come into the Conway Hall. Actually, the name of the booking agent, they made it £11.37. I put in a tenner and they've added their cut to it. So it's come out that very odd sum. Anyway, that's it. Tell your friends, 29th of November, Conway Hall, 7 o'clock. See you there. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.